Now we want to move into what we call the individual awards, but it's always going to be the result of a team. We have 3 awards here. One is the Rising Star of the Year, the second one is Entrepreneur of the Year, and the third is Startup Community Champion. And we're going to do this in probably a little unorthodox way. I'm going to introduce somebody who's then going to introduce the winner. And the reason we're doing that is that allows someone who knows the winner in a very good way cover off a lot of the who, what, where, when about that person and what led them to the award. And then that gives the winner the time to really talk about the why and how they did what they did, why they did what they did. And knowing that there's entrepreneurs in the level, from every level, from college students to very well established, these stories are going to be very inspiring. And so for that, the first person I'm going to introduce is Jeff Ponders. He's a principal at Invest Detroit Ventures. He's also an investor and a co-founder of Commune Angels. And he's going to introduce our Rising Star of the Year.
Thanks, David. How's everybody doing tonight? Oh my God, that was amazing. All right, cool. So I have the honor of introducing my friend tonight. So I met Darren Riley a little bit under 10 years ago. I was judging a pitch competition. He was a recent college graduate who had just moved to Detroit. And he was pitching. He actually won the pitch competition. And it was not for this company. It was a long time ago. So Darren moved to Detroit after completing his degree at Carnegie Mellon to pursue tech here in Detroit. Right? Yeah, this is a good thing. It's a good thing. And so since he's been here, he's worked for multiple companies. He's supported countless entrepreneurs, both as a coach, as a developer, as an entrepreneur. He's a co-founder of Commune Angels also. And so as we celebrate him tonight, it's not just for the work he's done in the ecosystem, but it's for the work he's done with Just Air. And many of you have probably heard of Just Air. You've probably seen this man on CNN way too many times. Most recently, he was rubbing elbows with a certain President Joe Biden. But what's interesting about Just Air is that he's solving a problem that's not just for the sake of making money. He's really trying to change lives here. And it's something that's really personal for him. So he moved here and he was living in Southwest Detroit, and he developed asthma. Because Southwest Detroit has some of the worst air quality in the country. And what's crazy is not only that it happened to him, but it also followed in the footsteps of his father, who developed asthma as an adult. So fast forward a number of years, and he says that we got to do something about this. And so Just Air has been attacking the problem of air quality. And so in just a few short years, they found themselves working with multiple municipalities across the Midwest. Again, he's rubbing elbows with top dignitaries. But most importantly, he's really making impact and changing lives and helping us to identify areas that are really hurting our people and making a difference to improve how we breathe where we live. And it's my pleasure to introduce my friend, my brother, Mr. Darren Riley.
Great. I really appreciate that. Don't make me cry. It's February. It's allergies. But yeah, so they said I got 10 minutes, but I think now that Jeff spoke, I got 1 minute. See, I'm good at jokes. All right, so this is not a stand-up comedy routine. All right, anyway, let's get to it. So my name is Darren, founder of Just Air. I just kind of want to take a two-pronged approach. One, explain some of the work that we're doing at Just Air, and number two, I'll leave you with some things that's been on my heart and things I want to share with this community as well. So for starters, I always start with the why. When we have a strong why, we can kind of overcome any how. And my why is pretty big. It hits home, as Jeff mentioned. Personally, developing asthma in 2018. The worst thing about having asthma is the time when you're starting to develop it and you start to feel the wheezing, not knowing what's really going on with your body. I'm a former athlete. Not being able to get up and down the court was really alarming to me. Having to sleep perpendicular, because if you sleep on your back, the gravity and not being able to breathe and that pain, nothing more in the world that you want than just fresh air. But when I was finally diagnosed, it opened my eyes just on some of the systemic issues around the air that we breathe. It's 2018. Now, fast forward, 2020, a lot happened. A lot happened. COVID being one of them. Most importantly for me in my community, the George Floyd incident that occurred as well, which through a lot of things and traumas that were happening that year, definitely changed my trajectory of where I was going to head. I actually was about to come to Ann Arbor for my MBA and pivoted with all the things that were happening in my life to say, hey, look, we got the resources, we got the network. I know what I'm really passionate about. Let's do something about it. And so that's where kind of the research began about air quality and why were black people dying more often from COVID than their white counterparts or other counterparts, predominantly because of the underlying disease like COVID, COPD, asthma that were really attacking the pulmonary, that made it harder for you to breathe and harder for you to live through a disease like COVID. So fast forward a little bit, just really passionate about that. Had resources like Jeff, Marlo, who's not here, Don, who's not here, and just so many mentors and people in this community. Antonio Luck from Endeavor. I used to work at Endeavor. It's been amazing. Doug is the most amazing person here, just the presence and the purpose and the work that he's done. But a lot of mentors have touched me through my journey to get to where Just Air is today. So why is not just a personal thing for me. It's really a global impact. Air quality costs the the globe $3 trillion, about 3% of the world's global GDP. The U.S., it costs $600 billion annually. There's the cost for remediating issues with air quality issues, people dying early when they can be contributing to the economy, the cost of kids being impacted from testing and education, people missing days of work, like my father, who was formerly incarcerated, who works outside. 30% of our workforce works outside, which is something to also think about, that has a poor lung as well, and has to deal with these issues. You miss days of work, you can't put food on the table. So why do I say all that? It's not just me personally, but the world is suffering from this invisible killer, right? So how are we solving this issue? First, getting the data. Pretty straightforward. That's where Just Air is right now. It's our first stage. We create a data infrastructure, localized air quality monitors. We're monitor agnostic. While we have built our own hardware, hardware is scary. You need a lot of capital. But we have built our own hardware, but we also use off-the-shelf monitors as well, which works really well for our model, which is twofold. We manage networks for communities. For example, in Wayne County, one of our largest contracts, 3-year contract for $2.1 million to deploy 100 monitors within the county of Wayne that has the highest rates of asthma emergency visits, 23,000 per patient on Medicaid and Medicare costs, which is a huge weight on tax dollars. And so we're using this to really shed light and awareness to also measure outcomes and solutions that can really drive and help protect our communities from these issues, right? And then overall, what we really provide is this insights platform that detects the sources, so raising awareness of where things are coming from, but also curating based on research and learnings. And I won't use the AI buzzword, I promise y'all. I'm not going to go there. But using different data analysis and regression means analysis, K-cluster means analysis to understand what is the right type of solution for that unique situation. For example, there's a school right down the street from me that has some of the heaviest trucking traffic, it's ridiculous, that you'll see ever. Now, multiply that when parents picking their kids up or dropping them off with idling, buses idling, diesel buses were some of the worst pollutants, with idling trucks from industry around the community. Has some of the highest rates of asthma at that school, kids missing days at school, etc. Now, a solution for that problem, rezoning, raising awareness, hey, parents, maybe turn your engine off. Or looking at electrification of school buses, which Detroit is getting a ton of that, and where do we prioritize the infrastructure? That's where our data comes into play and actually moves the needle and making sure kids are healthy, they're learning, and our future is protected, right? So this is one unique kind of example. We are across 7 states. One state that I'd like to shout out to, North Carolina, is where I was born, not raised. But in Cherokee, North Carolina, the tribe Eastern Band Cherokee using our solution, just our SaaS platform, to manage their own network. So what we had to build for ourselves to manage 100 network monitors, other places are using our information, our infrastructure to manage their own air quality management system, right? Department of Transportation in Colorado using our data information to understand the impacts of the I-70 highway that's ripping through a diverse community that's going underground to hopefully curb some emissions and issues. above ground, right? So those are a couple use cases. Overall, this whole journey, I'm going to phase two of my speech, is one, and this award is one to really prove a philosophy and a hypothesis that I've always had from my father, that we all are a product of our environment. Everything I do, my team, and all the work that we have done is all because of folks like you all. I'm hearing the pitches today, hearing the awards, and all the great technology. It's really from this chain and supportive networking community that really allows the expression or life experience to express itself, right? I pull that back forward. Let's give you a kind of a timeline of my journey a bit, and hopefully it comes full circle. If not, I'm sorry. You gave me 10 minutes. All right. No, but one thing, an inflection point that I don't often share, but I think it feels right to share. When I was 5 years old, my father was incarcerated. Growing up in a single-parent home with a young mother, my mother didn't graduate from college. She was 21 when she had me, and seeing the pains and stuff that she went through is something that definitely always motivated me, out of pain, right? Look at the statistics. I shouldn't be here right now in front of you all, but what it took is a grandmother who was supportive, a mother who never found me wanting. I never asked for anything more than I had everything I wanted, right? I had no idea how she was doing it. She worked at Circuit City, First Union Bank, and this and over here, etc. Circuit City for young kids is like the red, you know what I'm saying, the red Best Buy, It's just like the Red Ranger Best Buy. Anyway, but just seeing her go through that experience, and one thing she always told me, even if I brought a B home or if I was acting up in class and people call me Darren, my father's name was Darren. I used to not go by Darren, but now I do. I love him now. That's a good dark joke, yeah. Is one thing she always instilled into me is just making sure that you don't want to be like your father, right? And I can move the world, like I would make an A, I would play so hard in basketball if I had that thought in my head, just like motivated by pain, anger, which is not a good thing, not healthy, not stable, but it's powerful. But I left the dark side of the force. Star Wars advocates. All right, here you go. All right, so but now fast forward, my father got out of prison when I was 15 years old. I didn't really write him as much, and that's a unique situation. Won't take time to go through. But when he got out, he called me, and one day I picked the phone. I remember the area code 336. I think it's like, I don't know where that's from. Anyway, but he picked up, and one thing he told me, and the first time I ever listened to him, he said, "I'm a product of my environment." He was a product of his environment. He grew up in Beasley, Queens Projects. I didn't really understand his story. Queens Projects in the 80s is like the epicenter of, like when Reagan said the war on drugs, he was talking about Beasley, Queens Projects, and all the situations. He grew up, he's the ninth of 10 children. Darren Riley was. When he went to school, he had to wear the cheap clothes, had to have hand-me-downs because he's the oldest and biggest. And so he got picked on, so he turned to the streets. And so when he had me, this accelerated those things, and your imagination can go where that goes, right? The first time I understood, like, dang, I could have my father all these years if, that environment wasn't what produced him and what created who he was. No one's waking up, my father's not waking up like, I want to leave my son and have a horrible life for him to grow up in. No one is thinking like that. So ever since then, 15 years old was crazy, but it was a pivotal, emotional time in my life where I said, hey, look, what can I do to see people who they are and look at the environment around them and not just think that the reason why they're doing what they're doing is because they want to be vicious or malicious, etc. Now, fast forward, my coaches, my stepdad, a black man who taught himself how to code before Google. He dropped out, right? Actually, now I gotta say before ChatGPT, everybody's coding with that now, right? And seeing that and having the imagery when I was about to enter high school, having the confidence to take a CS course and my teacher really honed in on me and really focused on me. Miss Jones, Mr. Rat, my two only black teachers who really made sure I was in the STEM. Right, went to Carnegie Mellon. Robert Cavalier, he's one of the greatest philosophers and deliverer of democracy. Literally woke me up because I was sleeping in his class, and he got really upset with me. So much so, I can say this here, whatever. I'm gonna say this here. I was like, oh, this dude being racist or something like that. No, he was like really cared about me. He pulled me to the side. He was like, look, man, you got life experience. You debate really well. Like read his books. I read through Thomas Hobbes, Socrates, all this kind of stuff, and it was like, I like learning now. But he woke me up, right? And these people, all I say is these people will carry me through my life, really, I love that. Thank y'all. I don't want to get all sensitive, but it's February. But overall, what I'm trying to get at is this: we have is a great opportunity in front of us. I'm just one individual, in Detroit. There's a ton of entrepreneurs that have a similar experience and have some powerful ideas. That we got to make sure we support and give the same support that y'all gave me to them, right? So that's my answer.
Let's do the official. I love that. Thank you. Okay, Entrepreneur of the Year. Sarah Seacott, Mobility Director for Ann Arbor Spark, is going to introduce our Entrepreneur of the Year.
Thank you, David. Move this computer because it's going to be in my way. Are you using this computer? Okay. Thank you. I feel like it's hard to follow Darren. You did a really great job. Thank you. My allergies are acting up a little bit after your story. So thanks for telling us your journey and being vulnerable. I appreciate it. Thank you, David, for introducing me. Good evening, everyone. This is the first NEF event I've been to. There's a lot of really friendly faces here, and you seem like a pretty easy crowd, so that's making me feel more comfortable than I felt earlier today. I'm really happy to have everybody here. I'm happy to be part of this event, recognizing the leaders and best in our region. And yes, that is a Go Blue tagline as I tee up my introduction of Ed Olson, the CEO and founder of May Mobility. Also, notably, a professor in electrical engineering and computer science department at my alma mater and favorite university, the University of Michigan. Go Blue. I'm honored to spend a few minutes talking about Ed. I got to spend some time with him last week to learn more about him and his journey that brought him here tonight to accept Entrepreneur of the Year award. I'm going to go way back. Ed was born in Bloomington, Minnesota, solidifying his status as a solid Midwesterner. He decided to venture to the East Coast when it was time to go to college, and he spent many years at MIT earning degrees, yes, plural, in computer science and engineering. He earned a PhD at MIT in electrical engineering and computer science, which is not for the faint of heart. Congratulations, Ed. He did tell me he was not a model student, but I think he obviously made it, so we don't really care about that. He also met his wife while he was there. Congratulations again, Ed. While he was in Boston, he had 3 graduate careers. The first 2 he declares that he failed miserably at. In fact, he was abandoned by one employer, microarchitecture and CPU design, company name not disclosed to me. And he was actually fired by the second one, doing software systems engineering. If you want to know more details about any of these, please connect with Ed after the ceremony. That's all I have. He was bored. He did not enjoy these assignments. They were lucrative, but they were not rewarding. He kept wandering off to work with startups. Then something changed, and I guess the third time is a charm. That's a saying we all know. Fortunately for Ed, one of his advisors noticed his love of robotics, and it had never occurred to him that he could have a career in robotics. He felt he wasn't a strong math student and that robotics was all math, but he wasn't sure he was up for the challenge, but he loved it, and when you love something, you dig deep and you make it happen, and that's what he did. In 1998, Ed started a robotics competition at MIT that is still going on today. He went to Italy and participated in an autonomous underwater vehicles mapping of the Mediterranean. He was on MIT's 2007 DARPA Urban Challenge team, where he had the honor of being part of the first autonomous vehicle collision between MIT and Cornell. Congratulations again, Ed. Leaders and the best. After that, Ed found his way to Ann Arbor and academia. Ed was teaching, developing, researching, and growing at the University of Michigan, earning tenure. He was recruited in 2016 to lead Toyota's autonomous vehicle development with a huge budget, which is an opportunity that some of us can only dream of. But Ed found himself wanting to commercialize his own ideas and build a product and a company that solves real problems. Enter May Mobility, founded in 2017. May Mobility started with 6 people, mostly from Ed's lab at the University of Michigan, with $0 in the bank and a 100 square foot office in the basement of MIHQ. So it's been a really crazy 6.5 years. May Mobility received their first VC investment in May of 2017, and they have continued to grow with over 250 employees, major partnerships with companies like Toyota, recently closed a Series D round, and has provided over 350,000 autonomy-enabled rides in over a dozen cities all over the world. In Ed's words, he has cracked the nut on how to build a profitable AV company. With licensed IP from U of M, May can build for less than other AV companies, supporting public transit and elevating the quality of service at the same time. Ed spoke to me about changing the way cities are built, making them more equitable, accessible, greener, which I think is something we can all get behind. It goes without saying, right, that Ed is slaying it at work and leading May Mobility. In his personal life, he enjoys spending time with his wife and his 2 children, ages 10 and 13. And it's a really good thing this event was not on a Tuesday, because if it was, he would have been playing the violin with the Ypsilanti Symphony. My final anecdote about Ed is that he codes for fun, which is just the cherry on top of the mountain of reasons that Ed is very deserving of this award. I'd like to welcome Ed Olson, CEO and founder of May Mobility.
I'm going to stand over here so I don't step on the laptop. So thank you so much. It is really an honor to be standing here and representing a huge amount of work from a whole lot of people that are not me. Really from the whole May team, I want to thank you for acknowledging what we've been doing. For those of you who don't know a lot about May, we build our own self-driving autonomy stack, from decision-making, perception, all of the AI technology. The product that we build, it looks to the rider like an Uber or Lyft. You pull out your phone, you request a ride, vehicle comes to you and takes you where you want to go. But what's different about May's approach and other companies in the space is that we're not a robotaxi. So we are not relying on fares from individual riders to fund and fuel the company. That's not our source of revenue. What we do instead is that we sell long-term transportation contracts to municipalities. So we want to work with cities that have hard transit problems and be able to use autonomous vehicles as a way of improving transit. This actually has a lot of great advantages from a business perspective. On the one hand, we're working with transit. We're helping make cities more beautiful and more equitable. I'll talk more about that in just a minute. But also, if you look out and look at the buses driving by, how many people are on them? They're usually empty. And it's not because transit planners aren't smart. It's that they're trying to solve transit problems that cities have with the wrong tool. A 50-passenger bus is just not the right tool for a city that is built to this car-centric model that we have in the United States. What you really need is something a lot more flexible, something that can go and pick someone up and take them where they need to go, and then go get the next customer. Cities are also used to thinking about transit in a very geofenced way. They think about bus route 22 is over here, and bus route 49 is over here. And that's great for us because it allows us to cherry pick which of those areas are good fits for the technology today. So we'll say yes to bus route 22, let's help there, and bus route 49, we can do that one next year. All of this means that we've been able to build a company that is vastly more capital efficient. Now, keep in mind, autonomous vehicle companies are not capital-light companies in the first place. So we've raised about $300 million to date. But today, I think we are the only AV company that generates profit by operating AVs. So the only positive margin AV company. We are the third AV company in the country to operate without safety drivers, carrying members of the general public on public roads. That's not Ann Arbor, that's coming. But this was in Sun City, Arizona. And part of it, to circle back to why we do what we do, autonomous technology can be deployed in lots of different ways, and sort of the nightmare situation in my mind is that everybody goes out and buys a car that now drives itself. That's awful. Because really what I want to do is I want to end personal car ownership. Think about the way that the city is built today. 30% of Ann Arbor is parking. That's awful. Right? Think of all the better ways we could use that land. It could be green space or affordable housing or cool restaurants. Really anything other than parking would be an upgrade. And the really terrible thing about this is that parking structures are also financially unsustainable for cities. If you think about this from a city planner perspective, every city parcel, you can think about having its own miniature P&L statement. So it's generating revenue based on the property taxes of the stuff that's in that parcel. And your costs are maintaining all the infrastructure around that parcel, the roads, the pipes, all of that. Turns out that a parking structure generates almost no revenue. And so the city is underwater financially for parking. This is the price that cities pay for building our cities to a car-centric model. It's much better to build city blocks that are generating revenue, that are providing real services to people. And the reason we can't do that is because we all insist on bringing our stupid cars downtown every day. Now, the question I oftentimes ask people is, do you like driving to work? And some people will say yes, but then I usually follow up as like, do you actually like driving to work, or do you just like it more than taking the bus? And the problem that we have today is that public transit is usually a pretty terrible experience. And so people who have the means to do anything else generally will. And so how do you end personal car ownership? How do I convince every single person here to stop buying personally owned cars and take public transit instead? Well, I'm a capitalist. I don't believe that we're going to do this through regulation and sticks. I think the way we do it is we make public transit so damn good that people choose to take public transit instead of buying a car. And that's where autonomy comes into play. Because to provide that level of service, short wait times, short trip times, flexible routing, cities would need to deploy many more vehicles, and that means many more drivers than they currently have to. But there's a massive driver shortage. If you talk to any city transit planner, one of the biggest problems they'll talk about is that they can't get enough drivers. One major city in the US, I don't think I'm supposed to name who it is, every morning, 25% of their bus drivers call out sick. They don't know which ones. Can you imagine trying to run a business when 25% of your workforce just doesn't show up every day? So in order to provide the level of service that we need to convince people to stop taking their personally owned cars downtown, we have to elevate the experience, which means we have to provide the drivers, but there are no drivers, so autonomous vehicles. And that is why we're building May and why we're approaching the market the way we are. It's very different. And we're really excited about what we're doing. We're in 12 cities, carried about 350,000 people, and as I mentioned, third company in the US to operate without safety drivers, which is a big deal. I was asked to share maybe a little bit of advice. It's always a little bit weird because I've been on one particular journey which may or may not have anything to do with the journey that the rest of you are on. But here we go anyway. So one of the things that I've learned that as a leader of a company, you have to be really plastic. The things that made me a really good CEO in the first years of the company, I was multi-talented. I could go write code with the engineers. I could go work on the hardware with the mechanical engineers, and then I could go turn around and pitch later that day. That's what you need in an early stage company, people who can go and do a little bit of everything. And in years 2 and 3 of that company, the thing that was my strength became my biggest liability. Because I still had that mentality of let me dive in, roll up my sleeves, and jump in next to you. And what this did is it made all of my team feel like I didn't trust them and that they couldn't do their job. And this was very nearly the end of May. So, there was a 3-month period, this was probably about 2019, where we had 100% turnover in the executives, VP and up. And, it was a large part of the way that I was leading the company. and not empowering my team to really go and lead, and not creating the opportunity for them to show what they could do. A lot of this I attributed to what I've since sort of identified as super CEO syndrome. So when I say this out loud, it's going to sound stupid, but I realized in the back of my head, what I thought a CEO was, a really good CEO, is the person who could go into any boardroom and like rip the shirt open. There's the Superman logo. What's the problem? Let's solve it. You do this. You do this. Ha ha! I saved the day. And you walk out the champion, and everybody's like, "Wow, he's awesome." That doesn't work. That's a really bad strategy. And one of the things I learned through this is that when things are not going well, when things are hard, everybody knows that. And being the person who's just so exuberantly confident, overconfident, who seems to be operating through a reality distortion field of look how great everything is and look how smart we are and how we're succeeding in everything, it just makes your team think that you're out of touch, or worse, dishonest. And it took me a long time to get comfortable with was realizing that it's not a sign of strength to be the cheerleader, the unshakable cheerleader. When I first started trying to speak more about the truth in what the challenges are, it was super scary, but it built the team. And the team started to believe me, and they started to trust me, and they started to generate ideas. And that started to make me trust them more. And what I think that's really led to is now, the where we are as a management team is just so wildly different from the team that I thought I wanted back in 2019. We have a team now that is fantastic. They all know how to do their jobs better than I know how to do their jobs, which is a great place to be. That should be your goal. And it feels great. And we've been able to accomplish a huge amount because we've got the team that can do it. So the final thing I want to end with is on advice, sort of meta advice, which is that you shouldn't take all advice, despite what I just said. I remember an early fundraising trip out to San Francisco. I was going up and down Sand Hill Road, and I was pitching. And this was a hell of a day, like probably 12 pitches in one day. By lunchtime, I didn't know what my company did anymore. Everyone was telling me, oh, well, that's interesting, but what you ought to do is this. And so there's a huge challenge when you're getting that advice. Recognize that there's wheat and chaff in there. You want to be open and receptive and get the good bits, but at the same time, there are times we need to kind of cover your ears and be like, okay, that's one thing that we just disagree on, and I'm going to go chase my vision. So you don't always want to take the advice. Another example of this was in 2010. There was this large robotics competition called the Magic Robotics Competition. The idea was you go build a team of robots that would do a collaborative search and rescue mission. So imagine, earthquake, and there's people buried in rubble. You want to send in a team of robots to go and map and find everyone who needs help. And 2010, I was a junior faculty member, pre-tenure, and I went to one of my mentors and said, I kind of want to do this. Is this a good idea? He's like, no, terrible idea. Because it's going to derail your research, you're not going to write any papers, and you're probably not going to win, and long story short, I did it. I did enter. We actually won it, which was great, but that's not actually the point. Because I knew something about myself, which is that the pursuit of building this, I trusted that where my skill set was, being very hands-on, very roll my sleeves up, like the strength that I had, that I was going to be able to generate the research products from that. And so what I really realized at the end of the day was that the advice I got was advice that he was giving himself. That was the right advice for him to have heard in my position, not necessarily the advice for me. So again, I'll end with this. I just gave you a bunch of advice, and now I'm telling you, take what makes sense for you, but really realize that I just spent the last 8 minutes talking to a younger, more naive version of myself. Thank you so much. Thank you.
as the laptop gets returned. Okay, so our last one is Startup Community Champion. And this is going to be a very interesting introduction because we're going to invite Darren Riley up here, who just won the Rising Star of the Year, to introduce the Startup Community Champion. And you're going to find out why he's the right person to do this.
Get your tissues ready. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm totally kidding. All good vibes now. First off, thank you all so much again. The NEF Startup Champion Award goes to no other than the greatest, latest Doug song. Surprise. I want to give a quick bio. I think knowing Doug probably rather than me just kind of talk the talk. Doug Song is the co-founder of the Song Foundation, formerly the co-founder of Duo Security, Michigan's first tech venture-backed unicorn. Come on, we gotta get a round of applause for that. As a founder and funder, Doug is a champion of growing community wealth, economic and social and cultural and environmental issues. What's most important, he's really looking at the lens of inclusivity for all. These are just words, but he really lives it. I just want to give a quick minute just to share my personal experience with Doug. I first met Doug, I believe it was probably 2018 or so. Not too far from here, his office. You probably don't remember, but I was working at Endeavor, and we're like kind of bringing all of our founders to meet you and give advice on culture and how you build Duo. And I was like, oh, I didn't know you then. I was like, oh yeah, we're gonna learn from this amazing company. Cool. I did not know that I was about to go in and hear about the Wu-Tang Clan, which speaks volumes into the counterculture and the way you kind of maneuver and express your art within the technology, which is something I learned. Right. The reason why, things like I feel comfortable up here and wearing my dreads or having a beard, like things that oftentimes in our culture you're afraid to express. Being a skateboarder yourself, that counterculture, subversive culture is culture, and that is also what creates organizations, not just the tech. So combining that. Two things, lessons I learned from you. One, if you want to make a mom and pop shop, or a mom and pop pizza shop or Domino's, you got 24 hours a day, why don't you just do Domino's? So you really encouraged me. I remember that conversation. I was like, should I just make this kind of a chill thing? You're like, no, man, go big or go home. And those words stick with me forever to this day. The other thing that you mentioned to me is around radical empathy. It's something I carry with myself all the time. Make sure you meet people who they are, look them in the eyes, really understand where they're coming from. Conflict creates creativity. All these words that you sit down and share with me. And the last thing I'll say, which I forgot to say before that, is that you're like the godfather of Black Tech Saturdays. You'll know that. Black Tech Saturdays, if people don't know that, is founder Johnny Turnledge. But I met Johnny through Michigan Founders Fund. Shout out to Trista. How you doing over there? I see you. Michigan Founders Fund. We were best friends. We started meeting and having 5 people, black folks, coding at DIA in the coffee shop, just like chopping it up and learning from each other in the ecosystem, how we navigate it. But through that ecosystem and through that work and the culture that you expressed in Michigan Founders Fund and what we carry with us, Johnny and I, out came Black Tech Saturdays, which everyone should go on the last Saturday of Black History Month, the 24th Saturday in Detroit. Definitely find out more. But one thing that I want to give you kudos to is the way you carry yourself, the culture, you give us confidence to be who we are and build the businesses that we know that are important. So without that, please give a shout out to Doug Song.
Thank you, Darren, so much. And thank you, NEF, for this really kind award. It means a lot. Startup community, I don't know, I got a lot of other pieces of Lucite and awards, but anything with community in it is a really important and special thing. Because again, it's, I just say, your title may make you a CEO or a manager, but your people actually really make you a leader. And I want to share an appreciation for all of you as well. Thank you all for being champions of this community, right? You don't have to be here. You don't have to show up to this stuff. You don't have to help each other. But this is why this works, right? This is why, we were successful here as a company as well, because again, success as many fathers say, we were rooted in community, right? In a way that Well, I'll share a little bit of story myself personally. You know, maybe talking on the why and the how. You know, we built a company called Duo Security. I'm a transplant from Maryland, from Baltimore. Came here for school, U of M, Go Blue. Actually, it's funny. You know, I was reflecting on how Duo also had green and white as our corporate colors, and yet, you know, yeah, equal opportunity, I guess. So we built this company here, really from our kind of history, right? So I came here. I got caught hacking when I was a freshman. All that kind of came out of an earlier history in my family, where my imprint on entrepreneurship was my father, right? He had a liquor store in West Baltimore. It was a pretty tough kind of business. You know, ultimately we moved it over to Jessup, Maryland, about a half mile from the state penitentiary, which is even worse. You know, anyway, I lost him when I was 18. He was carjacked, stabbed 11 times, all this. And having had that experience sort of, in computer security, but also in working my father's store since I was 8, you know, sort of seeing the kind of, you know, mass of humanity and, you know, sort of what that looks like in a community. I was very proud to be part of a business where there was an impact. I saw my father hire returned citizens, right, from the Jessup Maryland House Correction just on the street. I saw him hire, you know, the entire Sanders family, basically, like the boys who lived in the motel next door. And I realized quickly that, you know, with community comes purpose. You know, it's more than just sort of making money, what have you. There's this real opportunity to do something really meaningful and special when you bring the community sort of into your world and what you do. And so anyway, when I came here, you know, it turned out I was able to turn, a bit of adversity into an opportunity, but it was really because someone took a chance on me. You know, so I don't know, Paul Anderson, he was a U of M administrator who I was hacking, and he basically took pity on me. He actually had a good idea to put me in service, right, and help me help the university stay out of trouble, right, from people like me. And so I worked on probation for 4 years for university as a security administrator, and parlayed it into business. First as a consultancy, then building product. But long story short, you know, it led to a career in security and entrepreneurship. Not that I ever was really looking for that, you know. So I was sort of an accidental entrepreneur, and I think many of us are, right? We end up finding problems that we have to go after, something that compels us, right, into you know, going after these problems. And we learn and we grow a lot along the way, right? Like, no one is a born CEO, and the only ones I've ever met that claim they are terrible people. You know, really. Like I knew a fellow who said he knew when he was 8 he was going to be a CEO, and a public company CEO at that, because those were the best CEOs. I'm like, you're a psychopath. Nobody really thinks like that, right? You develop and you grow sort of into these opportunities through your own personal journey of leadership, which again is helped by folks like yourselves along the way and each other. And so, just a couple of words on sort of why I'm doing this now after sort of a career entrepreneurship, and I think I'm done. You know, like we sold that first company for like a $2.5 million, sold the second one for $250 million, Arbor Networks, and then we sold Duo for $2.5 billion. So I don't think I got a $25 billion company in me. But when you win, you know, you can't keep it to yourself. And so, you know, we did start the foundation really to go and try to address the problems that exist today. But there's something that probably all founders and CEOs know, is that, you know, revenue tends to solve almost all problems, right? Or at least gives you an opportunity to. And in our communities, right, we have this issue, right? It's a big, broader issue. I think Michigan is now, 39th in the country in terms of personal income, which is really hard for us to sort of grapple with. When back in 1949, whatever, you know, it was all Michigan and all Ohio cities that were the top cities in this country to live in, based on average earnings per resident. As recently as 1980, half the top 10 MSAs in this country, right, to live in by average earnings per resident were in Michigan as well. But we sort of lost the script somehow, right, as the world changed, and, you know, the knowledge economy, right, really took off. IT, technology, healthcare, finance, all this, the rise of all the coastal cities and those economies. And it's really, really critical that I think at this point we figure out how technology can be the great equalizer, right, for our communities and for our country. It's the core thesis, actually, of sort of Bidenomics, right? So I have a friend here, Neil Kane, who's on this Department of Commerce committee with me, but we were appointed by Secretary Armando for for the National Advisory Council on Innovation Entrepreneurship. We've been helping to shape and steward some of the recommendations around the $280 billion, right, the Chips and Science Act. Most recently, we just voted on and approved and published a kind of 10-point platform for national entrepreneurship driving economic equity through this activity. And at this point, this is the purpose that I've sort of found right in community post our exit. I believe that we have a unique opportunity at this moment in this state to really drive an economic equity and shared prosperity if we can connect the dots of all these people, resources, and situations that we have here. And it requires, not just what I call the nouns of economic development, right? The startups, the companies, the talent, the capital, but the verbs. Right? How do we connect those things? How do we amplify that work? How do we advocate for it? Right? We have to connect those things. And so organizations like NEF, like Michigan Founders Fund, shout out to Trista there as well, that pull together these communities in support of one another. This is actually how we do this. And I think we, again, if I'm any sort of champion right now, it's mostly because I'm trying to just make sure everyone doing this work, that the folks who are helping all these folks do this are supported. Right? The state has been kind of doing this for a long time. There have been many, many other, but there's so many of you, and you all know who you are, and probably most of you in this room at some level, have been doing this work with it's almost thankless, right? Like who gets paid for any of this work, right? I mean, some of you do, right? It's Spark and so forth, but by and large, this is a labor of love. We do this because we care. And, we think about, what it takes to develop. We were the first tech unicorn or whatever. There have been 5 more since us, right, since 2018. 5 more. And only one of them, actually, technically, is strictly automotive, right, Rivian. And Rivian left. They came from Florida, they set up here, and then they're in California now, and who cares, right? There's so many other successful successful founders and opportunities here. If we can dream a little bigger, think a little broader about, again, what the future could hold here. And so thank you for the work that you do in helping all these folks achieve their dreams and protecting and supporting these folks. These are the folks, these founders are the ones who put their necks out there on the line every day with what they're doing with their businesses. It is our job to wrap around those folks, support them, protect them, and see them be successful, because without them, we don't have what's next, right? All of the tax base, all the jobs, and the better story for this community. And so if I have any advice, it's really not real advice. I'm looking for a call to action here, which is, one that came from sort of how we operated, but to be kinder than necessary, right? Go out of your way to help each other be successful. Do the work, right, to connect each other. It's not a good event, for instance, if you've all come and you've met a bunch of people. It's a good event you've come and you've introduced a bunch of people. Subtle thing, but that's how we actually build the mesh of relationships that really comprise a successful community. It's how people, opportunity, need, resources all find each other. And this is work that is very much grassroots. There's no institutional kind of stuff that really drives this stuff, right? This is people like you all showing up for each other in these kind of events, in these kinds of ways every day. And so, again, I thank you for this recognition, but really what I ask is that, you all continue to do this work and give first. Right? Really do the work of building culture, connection, and community, as is the Michigan Founders Fund slogan. Because those verbs, right, those verbs that connect us, that's how we win together. And that's how, again, ultimately, I think we'll see many more unicorns, hopefully in a way that is much more inclusive, much more equitable, and much more inspiring than what's come before. And the last thing I'll just say is thank you to all the founders who came before me in this work. If they weren't for them, I don't think I would have thought this possible, right? Like when Roger Newton sold, totally outside my space, but, we sold Esperion. He was the first non-tech, specifically billionaire, or a billion-dollar exit with Esperion. But when you saw those kind of wins, that's what's special about this place, right? When anyone succeeds, we all root for them. We all cheer for them. And that's, if it weren't for those kind of visible leaders, those kind of relatable heroes, right? showing up our community, doing these things, and everyone in here turning out, right, to help support them, I don't think I would have even tried, right? And so this is really important work you're doing. This is really important work that I think is going to drive the future of this state. And that's really the focus that I have right now. And if there's anything I can do to be helpful, do let me know. I'm investing in a bunch of funds. I am doing a bunch of direct angel investing, although mostly, I'll just be frank with you, I'm trying to be the friends and family money for a lot of people whose friends and family don't have money. So typically a lot of underrepresented founders and founders who don't have the same access to capital that maybe others might. But in so many other ways, whether it's through rounding up all the family offices and trying to get them to do more stuff here, or working with some of the policymakers, or we're trying to make sure, again, that our founders are all finding each other and again, supporting each other. Building a culture of care for each other in this way, as a business community that is about community, is something that I think is really unique, really special. And if we succeed at this, Michigan will be the best place for founders to come and build their companies because of it. So thank you for all you do, and I'll be sticking around here, so spend more time with y'all.
Okay, that is why we do what we do. And I love what Doug said about, it needs to be a verb, not a noun. A noun is a place and time. A verb is you're moving forward. He's a brilliant example of, propelling the entire ecosystem forward. So thank you for that. And, it's directions for all of us. So onward and upward.